Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
Good morning, everybody. Like I say, this is the Team Leader Supervisor Assessment Plan number 3, an update just to go through the changes so we're aware of what's needed, both from on-programme and also from an endpoint assessment point of view. So here's just a summary of the assessment plan. So you'll see there, as on-programme, typically 12 to 18 months. And as with all the apprenticeship standards, working towards English and mathematics at level 2 if required. For this new assessment plan, there is a portfolio of evidence to compile during the on-programme, and we'll come into that in a little bit more detail. What we also have is gateway, as we all know what gateway is. So that's when the employer is actually satisfied that the apprentice has met the requirements, and that all the on-programme qualifications, i.e. the functional skills, has been met, and also the portfolio evidence has been completed. I'm going to go through the endpoint assessment components. There's actually 2 now for this new assessment plan. There is a presentation and also a professional discussion. And as before, the professional recognition aligns with the Chartered Management of Institute. So just again, as an overview, so this is for all new starts from the 26th of June this year. So anything up to the any learners on programme that start up to the 25th are on assessment plan version 2. All starts from the 26th of June. When you complete your ILR, it's actually all learners will have to start on the version 3. 12 to 18 months on programme. The funding band is there, which is 4,500. There is a portfolio collation, like I say, we will go through that. And then the 2 EPA components there, we have a presentation and a professional discussion. So it is different to the previous assessment plan 2. Okay, so we've got the countdown to gateway. We've got 12 to 18 months on programme. What happens while they're on programme? Well, they're going to collect, your apprentices are going to collect the evidence, which is around the knowledge, skills and behaviours, again, as per the assessment plan. This needs to be mapped. Learners need to be registered at least 3 months prior to their gateway. Learners will need to be prepped. So we've got here, prep the apprentice for EPA around mock discussions, getting them ready for professional discussion. What is a professional discussion? Are they prepared? And also around their presentation, are they going to be able to do the presentation, and also with their topics. There needs to be at least 2 weeks notice for booking, and this is due to the preparation that the apprentice is required for the presentation, and they need to be able to prep for that time. And like I say, the presentation topic is sent to the apprentice by the endpoint assessment organisation. Okay, so let's look at this. What does the portfolio actually look like? So the apprentice will have prepared a portfolio of evidence during the on-programme phase, and this is going to support the professional discussion. The actual portfolio will not be graded. It's not part of the grading, but it actually backs up the professional discussion that takes place at endpoint assessment. The format and structure of the portfolio must be agreed between the employer and the apprentice, and as always, ideally, electronically presented. There needs to be a clear mapping document for the portfolio, which clearly shows how each piece of evidence is mapped against the knowledge, skills and behaviours that will then be assessed at the professional discussion endpoint assessment. There will be a mapping document, and I'll come again show you a sample of what we will be providing for that particular part of the apprenticeship. Reflective accounts and self-evaluation cannot be included. So this is a very important part, that these cannot be part of portfolio evidence, and it should not include any methods of self-assessment. So that's very important that they can't have that. The portfolio should contain written accounts of activities that have been completed and, like I said before, referenced against the relevant knowledge, skills and behaviour. Supported by evidence, video, audio, written statements, project plans, the usual evidence that would come through. You can have a CPD log, personal development plan, performance reviews, witness testimonies, etc. So the content's got to be sufficient to evidence the apprentice can apply the relevant knowledge, skills and behaviours. It's really important that that is clearly mapped. If it's not mapped, it will get turned away at Gateway, because that is sort of as the starting point for an endpoint assessment organisation to plan the professional discussion when they come to that part of the assessment. And typically a portfolio will have 20 pieces of evidence. Employer contributions should focus only on direct observation. So we all know about witness testimonies. It's not about opinions. It's about exactly what they have witnessed your apprentice completing. It's got to be valid, and it's got to attribute to the apprentice, and it's got to confirm a statement from the employer. And it must be submitted to the endpoint assessment organisation at Gateway. So it must be uploaded to the management information system at Gateway for the portfolio to actually be checked with the mapping document. This is going to be quite small, but again, this will be sent out with the slides. So this is a document that will be available for this particular standard. And this is the mapping document, and this is to go with the portfolio. So you'll see there all the knowledge, skills and behaviours will be in this mapping document. So an apprentice, the training provider, the employer can clearly see what is required. This is pulled directly from the assessment plan. So working alongside the assessment plan and this document, a learner will be able to fully understand why they're collecting their evidence. So against each knowledge, skill or behaviour, you'll see there it says portfolio evidence reference, and that's where it needs to be shown either a piece of evidence number 1, number 2. However the apprentice decides to reference their portfolio, that has to be clearly shown. Any portfolios that are put forward at Gateway without the mapping document, like I say, will be declined and sent back. This is part of the standard. It must have this attached to it. Okay, so endpoint assessment component 1. So let's go through actually what's going to be happening. The learner's reached Gateway and everything's gone through, so what's going to actually happen? Okay, the first component is the presentation delivery. Now just a note to everybody, it does again clearly state in the assessment plan that these components can be taken in any order. So again, it's down to, at that Gateway meeting, having that discussion in actually what order would that apprentice prefer to have their endpoint assessments taking place. Now the presentation delivery, it will last a total of 50 minutes, a 20 minutes presentation followed by a 30-minute questioning session. It says refer to the assessment plan for access requirements. So this is what the apprentice will need to have at hand. So they will need to be able to get to either PowerPoint slides, anything like that when they're actually doing their presentation. The presentation can be delivered remotely or it can be assessed face-to-face. Again, that's an employer and apprentice decision. We will be offering both of those assessment ways of completing this. But just bear in mind that if it is going to be remote, that the apprentice has the correct equipment, i.e. they have access to video recordings, they have to be able to have a 360-degree check of the room. The presentation, you'll see there, is just done to the endpoint assessor, and it has to be done in an environment that's free from distraction. Okay. The questions that will follow the presentation will again cover each of the knowledge, skills and behaviour groups, and there will be a minimum of 5 questions. The learner is given the topic by the endpoint assessment organisation and then will be given 2 weeks to prepare. So this is where I mentioned earlier, where 2 weeks notice is needed for that date for the endpoint assessment. This is actually why, because we need to be able to give that learner that time, because as soon as they get to Gateway and they've passed through Gateway, that's when we as an endpoint assessment organisation will be giving them their topic. Now, the grading has also changed for this assessment plan. You'll see there that it's a fail, pass or distinction. Merit has been taken out of this assessment plan. Now we go on to the professional discussion. As mentioned earlier, it's completely underpinned by the portfolio. 60 minutes, open competency-based questions. We know what the professional discussion is all about. It's about asking that open question and the learner apprentice giving us as much information as they possibly can around that particular question. It underpins the portfolio. And like I said earlier, the portfolio is not assessed or graded, but it's used for us to be able to plan the professional discussion questions. Again, the professional discussion can be remote. It can be face-to-face, but it must take place in a quiet room, again, free from distractions. This is all under, as we would say, exam conditions. The apprentice and the endpoint assessor will both have the portfolio at hand, and it can be used as reference. So if a question was asked and the apprentice learner wanted to actually refer to their portfolio, they can do. It can be available. 6 competency-based questions will be selected, and if the endpoint assessor feels that not everything has been covered and they want more detail, further questions can be asked if needed. And again, the grading fail, pass or distinction. At this point, I'm just going to actually see if we've had any questions before I move on to the next slide. So nothing's come through yet. If you do have any questions, please do come through in the chat box so I can answer anything as we go along. So what have we got? So we're going to have apprentice resources available October 2020. We're just completing these now. They will be available to any of our centres, any of our training providers or employers that sign up to work with GP Strategies Assessment Services. These will be available to you. So as always, we've got the assessment plans. We have a Gateway declaration form, which will be completed at the 3-way conversation at that meeting, signed and uploaded onto our MIS system. There will be the presentation topics. The presentation topics are available in the assessment plan. So if anybody wanted to actually have a look at those, they are available in there. And as we move on through the assessments, as an endpoint assessment organisation, we will be adding more of our own topics. A clear mapping guide, so an apprentice will be able to see, and also provider and employer will clearly be able to see where the knowledge, skills and behaviours are mapped to, and also to give that apprentice that real good chance of looking, right, okay, what do I need to get a pass, what do I need to get a distinction, this is what I need to be covering, so they will be available. An MIS user support guide, again for booking your EPA assessments, and looking at progress, uploading, so there's full support around there. That can be on a one-to-one support with centres. We can do videos, and also there's guidebooks. The grading rationale as mentioned, what do we need to get a pass, what do we need to get a distinction. There are toolkits available. We will have toolkits available for both on-programme and also apprentice. The on-programme toolkits are going to be available for assessors, tutors, and that will help them prepare their apprentices for endpoint assessment, but really give them a good guidance around the portfolio and preparing them for their endpoint assessment with mock questions and mock presentations in there. So it's going to be really, really good resources for them to use. And for the apprentice, a toolkit that will really get them to understand what the assessment is all about, how that journey will work for them so they understand what's coming, so they can understand what the differences between the on-programme assessment and also their endpoint assessment, and again how they can then work between the pass and also the distinction grading, so they fully understand that. And then, as I shown you earlier, the sample, there will be a portfolio mapping document. Again, that's available. As I mentioned before, that has to be submitted with the portfolio at Gateway. Okay, so that's a whirlwind tour of the assessment plan version 3. Just as a quick summary, so compared to version 2, where we have the professional discussion, the CBI, the CPD, and also a knowledge test. There's none of that in this version 3. There's only 2 components, which is the presentation and the professional discussion. The grading is different. There's no merit, so it is a fail, a pass, or a distinction. But like I say, there will be guidance available to help on-programme assessors and also apprentices to achieve through this standard. And just a reminder, all this is from the 26th of June, so any apprentices that actually start on programme on the 26th of June onwards. There are links in this webinar as well when we send it out, and these slides to the assessment plan, just in case you haven't had a chance to look over it yet. So there are links to that. So really get yourself to familiarise yourself with that plan. So that's the end of the webinar. So if there are any questions, please do let me know. Like I said earlier, these slides will be sent out to everybody, and a recording of the webinar, along with my contact details. So if there's anything that you think of following this webinar, if you listen to it again, if you look at the slides, then please do contact me to see how we can help in any way. If there's anything we can do around standardisation for your teams, we can have bespoke one-to-one meetings, so please do let us know. Okay, so like I say, if there's any questions, please do pop them up. Just wait a few minutes just to see if anybody does have any. Okay, we have had a question, and it's around the on-the-job training. So it's saying about the record. Do they still have to keep a record of on-the-job training? Yes, they will, because this is all to do with, that's to do with the funding, and that's actually to do with the on-programme. So that will still need to be documented for funding purposes. Okay, another question's come through. Thank you. Have the requirements for the endpoint assessors actually changed at all with Q3? No, it's the requirements for endpoint assessors is still actually the same, Peter. So that hasn't changed at all. Exactly the same for the version 2 on version 3. Okay. Are there any other questions from anybody? Well, we're at our 20 minutes, so I didn't want to keep you. I know time is precious to everybody at the moment. So I want to thank you for joining our webinar today. I really do hope you found it useful. And also, like I said, if you do have any questions following the webinar, and if I can help in any way, please do contact me directly. My contact details will be sent out to you all. Sorry, we do just have another question. Do you have a standard panel of questions? Yes, there are standard questions. So what we have to produce is standard questions for both the professional discussion and around the presentation based on the knowledge, skills and behaviours. And we have what we call a bank of questions. So we have those. They're not to be shared, unfortunately, because that's what we don't want to give anybody the answers. But yes, we do have those. We do have that resource for our endpoint assessors. So again, thanks for that question. I'm going to finish off now if there's nothing else. Like I say, I want you all to have a great day, and thank you again for joining, and stay safe, everybody. Thank you.
This webinar is brought to you by GP Strategies. Together we can create a world where business excellence makes possibilities achievable. You can access more webinars or download additional resources at gpstrategies.com/resources-library.